Hi everyone, welcome back to Skywatch Weekly. This week we've got one object to talk about, one planet in particular that we haven't seen yet in this series. It's a little bit elusive, it's the hardest of the naked eye planets to see, but this week we'll tell you when and where to look. Now, oftentimes we say there are 5 naked eye planets. There are technically 6. You can see Uranus from a very dark sky with really good eyesight on a moonless night, just with your eyes. But from a place like Chicago or with really any moderate amount of light pollution, you can need binoculars or a telescope in order to see it. So that leaves us with 5. Well, we've talked about Jupiter and Saturn so far. They're going to be visible later in the night. Right now they're rising right around midnight, but over the next couple of months they're going to be rising earlier and earlier, and eventually by about mid-July you're going to catch them in the sky after sunset. You won't have to wait until later in the night. We also talked about Mars. That'll be hanging out as more of an early morning planet to check out. But Venus as well, that's been hanging out in the west after sunset, really for the entire year so far. That's going to be ending this month, but still visible over the next couple of weeks. Well, that leaves us with Mercury. Mercury is definitely the hardest of those 5 planets to see with the naked eye, but over the next week especially is an excellent chance to give it a look. Well, let's begin by looking towards the west-northwest here. We're looking at our sort of standard view here with the bright planet Venus, the most obvious thing in this direction. And just below it, you're seeing here the planet Mercury. Now you might be saying, well, this is easy enough. I can look in the west and see Venus and Mercury. But you have to remember, this isn't 2 hours after sunset. If you're looking 2 hours after sunset, Mercury's long gone. So is Venus, by the way. Mercury right now is only visible for the first hour or so after the sun goes down. And if you don't have an extremely clear western horizon, I would recommend looking for it even earlier, maybe half an hour to 45 minutes after the sun has set. Well, why is Mercury so challenging? Why can't we look for it later in the night or at other times of the year when it's more visible? Well, here's the thing. It's so close to the sun. So that means it moves quickly. So that means the times that it's visible are measured in weeks instead of months or even seasons. And when it is visible, it's only ever visible just after sunset or just before sunrise. It never appears in a fully dark sky. So you're always going to be looking at it against some amount of twilight glow. To see why that is, let's lift off of the Earth. So now we're going several hundred miles above Earth's surface. Here we can see the sun in the dark sky, so no atmosphere here. So we have Mercury here. You can see its orbit we've added in here. Also have Venus. You can see Orion off to the left, the Pleiades just off to the upper right of the sun. A lot of things we've talked about in previous episodes, but right now they're blocked by the sun. Well, here we have Mercury. So in the case of Mercury, its orbit is close to the sun. It's about 1/3 of the distance away from the sun that Earth is. So because of that, it only ever appears a maximum of about 25 degrees away from the sun. So 25 degrees in the sky. That's about the width of the Big Dipper from handle to bowl. It's also about the height of Orion the Hunter. Well, if you imagine that after sunset, that's a pretty good height, but keep in mind you can't see Mercury right after the sun goes down. You have to wait until the sky is dark enough in order to see it. So let's zoom back into Earth's atmosphere here, and we'll be able to see that as you look through the Earth's atmosphere, it adds a certain amount of challenge to this object. Now, I think that adds some of the fun as well. If something's the most obvious thing in the sky, it's not all that hard to spot. But in the case of Mercury, it's always going to be in this twilight glow, in this case, close to the planet Venus, and in fact, over the next week or so, close to the moon as well, which is certainly going to help you try and find it. So what do we have? Well, tonight, if you're going outside on the 20th, Wednesday, May 20th, this is the view you'll see. Now, we talked before about 25 degrees being about the height of Orion above the horizon. This is going to be a lot smaller. If you were to hold your fist out at arm's length, that fist is about 10 degrees wide. And here, about half an hour after the sun goes down, that's about the height that Mercury is going to be over the horizon. So you need a very clear west-northwest horizon here, looking, as I said, about half an hour after the sun goes down. So Venus is there, and just below it, here on the 20th, is going to be Mercury. Now, tomorrow night, on the 21st, this is when they're very close together. They're only about 1 degree apart. Now 1 degree, that's about twice the width of the full moon, which might seem like a lot of space, but when you actually look at it up in the sky, you're going to notice just how close together these two are. So about 1 degree apart. If you have binoculars, the average field of view for a pair of binoculars is about 5 degrees. This is going to fit easily in the range of a pair of binoculars. Now, the next night, Friday the 22nd, Venus is now below Mercury in the sky. Now here's the thing, Venus has been with us the entire year so far. Absolutely brilliant in the west, but that does end this month. At the beginning of May, it was setting about 3.5 hours after the sun goes down. By the end of May, it'll be about 30 minutes after sunset that you'll find Venus setting. And then in early June, Venus will be essentially in between the Earth and the sun and not visible anymore for this year after the sun goes down. Well, the next night, Saturday the 23rd, Venus a little bit lower, Mercury actually a little bit higher. It's not reaching its highest point over the horizon until June 4th. But you do want to catch it while there's something bright nearby, like Venus or like the moon, which on the next night, Sunday the 24th, this is when you're going to have an excellent chance to see the moon, Mercury, and Venus right there in a row. This is a little bit later of a view here. This is about an hour after sunset. Keep in mind, though, these planets are very low on the horizon. Very tricky to catch. You do want to be out there and looking in the right direction. Get your bearings while you still have a little bit of a twilight glow there, and look for that. The moon there is going to be a very thin crescent. Beautiful, for sure, but a little bit tenuous, a little bit tough to catch. And then with Mercury and Venus further down below. So a beautiful twilight show here over the next week or so with 2 planets and the moon making great appearances. Well, that's what we have for you this week. Skywatch Weekly, once again, coming out every Wednesday. Don't forget to subscribe. Also follow the Adler Planetarium on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks so much, and we'll see you again next week.